Kelly Gorsuch is a serial entrepreneur, master stylist, and barber, and educator with 27 years of experience and current owner of 2 barbershops and salon. Welcome back to the Hairdresser Strong Show. I'm your host, Robert Hughes, and today I'm with Kelly Gorsuch. How are you doing today, Kelly?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you very much. Thanks again for coming on the show.
And this is why I'm so interesting to talk to is our industry is very worried about projecting how amazing, like how great it is, and like how perfect and pretty and let's just all stay positive. And that's like a recipe for, it's literally a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
You can't talk about the bad stuff. Like how do you ever run anything?
Right.
Because all running stuff is trying to mitigate the bad stuff.
I totally agree. Well, I had actually had a conversation where I brought up the toxicity in a salon and no one wanted to talk about it. And they just wanted to say like, well, it's probably you should focus on yourself. I don't disagree with it, but it's also a very good way of avoiding the conversation. But so like, we're kind of touching on, so like my whole idea is, and this is why I really want to have this conversation. I'm happy that you brought it up with so much, with so much vigor. And like, you were talking about the different business models. And like, I think one of my biggest focuses is on the changing expectations and wants and rising talent that's in this industry. Like what I see is I go up there and I'm like, hey, y'all got it all wrong. You need to assist and you need apprentice and then you need to do these steps. And they're like, well, I don't want to hear that. And they're all pissed at me. And then I go to the salon owners. I'm like, hey, look, you can't keep them on the floor for more than a year. Like they're probably not going to want to work for you. And they're like, well, I'm not promising anybody that. Like, this is my brand, And so I'm like, there's this big gap. And what I realized is I was at the school and I was going up there and being like the old person saying, you got to do it like me. Instead of like with the show, I've learned that there are so many different pathways, career paths. And, so I think it's cool that you put up like deconstructing what you want. I think most people are thinking what they want is the glamour of being a hustler. And so
there's nothing glamorous at all about that.
No, it's like, tough work. They just like
being a salon owner, worst thing about the industry. It's my least favorite part about the entire industry. Because the thing is, you can make the absolute right decision and you'll be demonized by 2 people. Right. And it's like, you could be completely helping their career and they can't see it because they have a different thought. And you're immediately wrong in their opinion, or you're trying to hold them back or whatever, but you're looking at it as a group and trying to make sure that we take care of each other and take care of the guests. And that's complicated, man. And there's not a right or a wrong way to do any of that, because this is why I don't believe in like a lot of like, I don't believe in a lot of the like life coaches in our industry, right? Because like there isn't a right way. And even in my own salons, it's constantly shifting. And so like, that's it in a nutshell. That's our industry. I mean, we make decisions that are not based on the best of information. And a lot of times it's based on feelings, and your fees just don't matter at the end of the day. Like I make decisions against what I believe all the time.
Right. So in this journey and that I've been doing with this show and learning about all of these different people's perspectives, experiences, and pathways and business models, the topic that seems to be constantly always there is a lot of people see the industry changing. I definitely see it changing into what I don't know, but the biggest thing that I see changing is the wants and desires of stylists. And I think COVID sped that up a lot. So like what I really like to get into whenever I have the chance is this topic of like, attitude, mentality, looking forward at like what my career looks like, or is there a different way to do business? Is there different technology that's available to help us better do business, to serve these these changes? You know, where are all these people going to work, or are they all going to fall on their face and end up going backwards and going through the same process that like I went through or you went through, like a slower journey to getting to where you want? You know, is this like a temporary move for where people are just going to jump out, fall on their face, go back and realize they did it wrong? Or is there like a new path forward coming out of school? I mean, these kids, I think they're coming out light years ahead of where I was when coming out of, you know, at my apprenticeship program with all this education and stuff. So like there is that. And they seem at least to have the ability to build their book way faster than most hairdressers that I knew coming out of school. So those are the pros, the positives I see for them. But then there's a gap. There's like, where are they getting the information they need to like build a book of diverse hairstyles and like actually working with the hair? Just because they can do a better job than what I did coming out of school, I think I was probably more well-rounded within the first year after my apprenticeship program than they are, because they kind of tend to focus on certain, like whatever is trending, these certain styles. So like, you know, what does that look like? What does that do to the industry, et cetera? So like, it's a lot of different big conversations, I think. And so it can go in many different ways.
Let's touch base on them. Let's touch base on them. Let's touch base on them all. Okay. So first, let me ask, what was wrong with the industry?
Well, I don't know that anything was wrong with it. I think that I think that young people going into school, this is my theory. These young people, they go into school, they're on their phones all the time. They're seeing there's being exposed to the industry before they even get in it. They see these rock star hairdressers, they see these super dope places and these super dope pictures. And then
so let me say first, let's presuppose that if the bulk of what you're seeing is kind of the same, it's probably not good.
Okay.
Right? It's probably not good. If we know that only about 5% of all hairdressers are any good, right? You need to get to like that 10,000, 11,000 hours to get good in this industry. Since we know that only 10 to 15% get there, right? The bulk of what you're seeing can't be good. So first you have to start to ask questions. Is what I'm seeing any good, right? Are these people any good? Just because they have 600,000, I will tell you that Angelo Seminara has less, he is the best living hairdresser and he's still alive in our time, period. But he's probably the best hairdresser that has ever existed, right? No one knows who his name is, right? He's over in Europe, so he's out of mind. But like, he's there, and no one in our country knows who he is. The best hairdresser that's ever lived, right? And like, so if you're now thinking that someone that has 700,000 followers in America who's doing just kind of you're cutting one lengths and then ironing them, it's good, then you first need to redefine what's good, and you need to start to reverse engineer, as we were talking about earlier. Go find the best hairdressers that you can find that have been doing it the longest. Don't start at the earliest because they don't have the experience. Start at the longest, and then look at their work and go, well, what are they doing different? Why are these guys? Well, I'll tell you, if you're looking at like Luke Hershon and David Mallet and Anthony Mascolo and Angelo Seminara, and if you're looking at like some of the masters that are alive and on our planet, right? The one common thread you'll see is they don't do hair the way that we see hair on Instagram. Well, why? You have to ask why. Well, maybe we're looking at the wrong people. Maybe we're thinking hairdressing should go in a direction that it should not go in, right? Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to create an industry that's turning hairdressing into a commodity because anybody can cut a one length and put an iron to it. Well, if you turn hairdressing into a commodity, well, then why the hell did you get in this industry? You got in this, and you can't tell me you got in this industry to not create, but to copy. I just don't buy. I don't buy it for a second. I got into this industry to create and do beautiful things and push forward with the people that I was beside and do a different direction, a different voice. I didn't get into this industry to do a one length and set the same shape curling iron on every single person. I just don't buy it, right? But the thing is, you're getting bombarded. It's like a little bit of a torture, right? You're getting bombarded with images that are bad because that's the bulk of hairdressing, right? So you start to go, well, wait, is this maybe right? But it's not right. It can't be right. If everybody does it, it can't be right. Right? Because we know that only 5% of all hairdressers are any good. So if you start at the top and pick out those top hairdressers and you start to see, well, what kind of feeling are they cutting with? Well, they're cutting hairdressing on a completely different level, right? Or are you following $40 hairdressers or are you following $400 hairdressers, right? Like, because I will tell you that like 400, the game changes. They should be totally different industries. And so what we were talking about earlier with like reverse engineering with the booth rental is like, if you want to be at the top, it's a different industry, right? You wouldn't say that 11 Madison Park and Noma are the same industry as McDonald's. Like they're just not. They're two different industries, right? So we need to separate and be honest about it and separate and be okay separating it, not being like, well, he said that and like he wants to be like an elitist and like, so what? I'm sorry. Like I want to retire from the industry and I want the industry to be good. And if I'm a bad guy for saying that, I'm happy to be the bad guy. I'm happy to be Voldemort, and now I've used that analogy twice, which is great for me. I think it works. But I think you have to really ask some hard questions, right? Like, who are we glorifying? It's crazy, right? Like I grew up in utter poverty, probably the worst poverty you could imagine in America, right? I know poverty. I know nothing about poverty compared to the rest of the world, right? I had a great childhood. I laughed my ass off. Like I had fun the whole way, right? The people who glorify that never make any sense to me. It's the same thing in our industry. Like the people who glorify like this middle and bottom, I don't understand. And the only thing that I can figure out is that they can't contemplate hairdressing being that good, right?
Okay,
like
so
they
I
don't.
got a okay, so
Yeah, go ahead.
on this like point, what do you think about the fact in your perspective, when a customer, just thinking about the customer from the customer's perspective, are they coming in and bringing in basically all the same pictures for the most part? I mean, that's pretty much my experience. There's like a pretty small group.
But the client doesn't know what they're talking about. They're not trained in this, right? So like they bring you in a picture, take that they want a feeling. They don't want the picture.
Right.
Does that make sense? Right? Like
yeah.
How are they going to tell you how to layer hair? How are you going to tell them how you're going to layer their hair? They don't know what you're talking about. You're just trying to make them feel stupid, right? Like think about it. You take a car to a mechanic's office and they sit there and they tell you how a carburetor works. The whole thing is designed for them to make you feel stupid and then more important. Well, we do that too that's what basic hairdressing, bad hairdressing is. They come in and you try to make them feel stupid about themselves, right? But like the real thing is you going, hey, you showed me a cool picture. You are paying me this much money for a reason. I'm going to give you that feeling, but I'm going to give you the best haircut of your life. And it may or may not end up being that picture, right? But you have to, one, you have to be confident. Two, you actually have to be skilled. And three, it has to be right. You don't get to guess, right? So the one thing I'll say is middle hairdressing, basic hairdressing is the Vidal Sassoon thing, repeatable hairdressing, right? Great hairdressing is the Gene Shalco of the industry, like the guys who do it with art, right? Like with an eye, they use their eye. Great hairdressing is a combination of the two.
So you think you can?
Right, you have to have both eye and repeatable hairdressing.
So do you think that someone could learn some of these more repeatable looks and apply them to a large enough percentage of their clientele to help them establish an income while they're continuing to learn to become a great hairdresser?
Of course. Okay. I mean, it's a journey, right? Like, I mean, the one great thing is the client doesn't know any better, right?
Well, yeah,
They only
that's
have their
right.
experience. So if they haven't been to someone at that level yet, well, they don't know what that level is yet, right? Like when I cut hair, I'm cutting for the hair to like basically dry into the shape I want. I'm not hoping that I have to cut hair on a level where like if they don't put an iron in or a brush in their hair, it still needs to look good. Well, that's
Right.
a very different level of hairdressing,
100%.
right? Because I'm cutting 100% for their density, for their texture, for their shape. I'm teaching them how to use product. I'm teaching them how to use hand styling techniques that they can do at home because I want their hair to look good all the time, not just when they style it once a week, right? That's brutal hairdressing, in my opinion. If you're forcing your people to get up and style hair for an hour a day, you're not doing them any favors, and they'll pay you
Right.
triple to not have to do that.
Totally.
So the answer to your question is no, I don't know. I mean, yes, I think you have to start somewhere. I mean,
Right.
we all start from zero. So to pretend like any one of us starts on a different part of the spectrum is just insane. We all start from zero where we know nothing, absolutely nothing. And the quicker you realize that, the quicker you can start on your journey. And to realize what you know is nothing. Right? Like, because I came out of hair school and they were like, oh, you're going to be like one of the greatest hairdressers day one. And I went to one of the best schools that ever lived. And I came out and I knew nothing. And you have to know that. And the only way to know that is to work around people that are better than you and then to teach, because you can't get good at this industry unless you can suss out what you're thinking and then teach that to someone else. Right. And so that touches on that thing earlier. It's like, oh, there's a lot of bad education out there, right? Like this industry is, since I've been in it, has been rife for life coaches and bad instructors and bad, like, for instance, like I don't mind name dropping. I don't really, want you to have to bleep anything out, but like there's some people that coached everybody to become like good independent stylists, right? And they have like a whole coaching thing around it, and they're very famous. But when I listen to them, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They've never owned anything. Well, why would you listen to someone who's never owned anything? Like, there's enough people who own stuff that you could just walk in and talk to. Why would you ever pay someone? And then the funniest thing was, like, recently they posted something that was like commission salons are the wave of the future. I'm like, they've never gone away. It exists because it's a great model, right? It's the same as chair rental. It works for people who want to work 2-3 days a week. Like, it makes sense, right? But like, if you care about the industry and you want to be a full-time hairdresser and you want to make money and put your kids through college and you want to retire from this field, well, it doesn't make sense for you, right? If it's just a supplement, like some income, and like get you out of the house, like, great, I'm for it. Right. But just being honest about what the industry is one, it's scary, right? Because if you listen to me, you're like, oh, this guy's so negative, right? Like, I mean, I posted posts about like what I thought the virus was going to do to the industry on like hair nerds. And I mean, I got trashed for it, like basically canceled for it. Everything I said is true. Everything I said 2+ years ago before we got shut down is 100% true.
Yeah, like what?
And not a single person has ever came to me and been like, oh, sorry about that. It's like, oh, don't be so negative. Well, I thought that like salons were going to get crushed.
Yeah.
I thought that like, the thing is, if everyone gets to go and do house calls and not pay taxes on that money, right? They're going to think, because people think whatever's happening now will always happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So no one's taken the next step. Well, what happens when society opens back up in a couple of years, which I thought was going to be 4 and it ended up being 2. Like, what happens when society opens up in a couple of years and people don't want you to come into their houses anymore? Because they don't want that. Right. They don't want that. They'll deal with it because, like, it sounds fun for a minute, but they don't want to be picking up hair off of their living room floor.
Right. Did you see people, a lot of stylists wanting to go independent as a result of having the experience of taking in all the money?
Yeah. And almost everybody that left me to do that is no longer in the industry within 1 year.
No, really?
Within 1 year. Right. Like, I mean, we had some people that left to do salons because never has there been a more profitable time to be a hairdresser. You were getting government money and cutting under the table, right? And keeping it all and getting tipped on top of it, right? Like, just being honest about it, yeah, that sounds pretty good, but you're not much of a good member of community if you're holding out taxes on your community, right? Like, this is I have a hard time listening to our community when they're always virtue signaling and not paying taxes. It really is like the one thing that I just don't. I'm just like, if you know you're not paying taxes on your money and you're holding out from society, please don't come on here and tell me how to live my life. It's as simple as that. Right. And this is where everyone, if you want to be good at anything in this world, start with one thing. What's your personal morals, your personal integrity? Start with rules of how you want to live your life. And then everything else gets easier because you'll just live your life with those morals. And then if you don't do it, right, because the problem with like signaling what you are and then you deep down are not that is it's called cognitive dissonance. So one of the reasons why I think we're the most unhappiest we are in human history is because we're all saying something we want you to believe we are, and we know deep down that's not true. And you can't lie to yourself. So, you know, in psychology, they talk about this, and it's like the greater that divide, the worse you feel about yourself. And so stop it. Just stop lying. It's pretty simple. Like I'm a normal guy, but I feel like I'm always going crazy because I watch the world always saying all these pretty things. And I'm like, the world doesn't exist like that. This is tough. It's a tough world. Hairdressing is tough. Getting going, it sucks.
Yeah.
Getting clientele is brutal. Learning how to do this is near impossible. Getting great is almost not doable because it takes so long, right? And like you have to fake it for so much of your career. And that's difficult for people, but it does get easier day by day. It gets easier, but it's not easy. And right now, you were saying earlier, that like they build faster. Well, I mean, my salons, I put somebody on the floor in my salons and they build within a month at a couple $100, right? Like that's the brands that's what brands build. Right. When you're starting off and you have to pay someone before you even know if you have a clientele, like that's not doable. So if you kill salons and you can't start in a salon and build a clientele and then move to a chair rental, well, who's losing? The entire industry.
Right. Well,
right. So if you're going to slowly destroy the industry, well, you're going to destroy the whole thing. You're not going to destroy just salons. You're going to destroy it all.
Right. So that's something that, okay. So when a stylist wants like a lot, what I've been talking about quite a bit is that stylists almost seem to have this like multi-shop plan, like go somewhere, learn, get some education, go to another place. Maybe it's the same place, but go to another place to build your book. And then another place to run your book the way you want to run it. That seems to be
me. Narcissism. Narcissism all the way across the board. All the way across the board. We don't care about society. We don't care about what this does to the industry. We don't care about those that come behind us, right? Like it's pretty, if you can only care about yourself, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. And you'll destroy everything else. And like my thing is like I got into this to help, not to hurt. I want to leave this industry in a better place than when I came into it. Simple as that.
What if
if they took that into account, it would be better.
Well, what about this? What about thinking of maybe, so the problem, it sounds like with this thought process or this thought pattern or this new like culture or however you want to say it, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the problem is the business model, the one that is educating and building people, requires people to stay longer than they might want to. Like what is the lifespan of a stylist from like hiring them, training them, building them to where you actually make money off, where you're actually getting a return on that investment?
You can't. I mean, you can't in today's world. You have to build a salon that's so dope that like one, can beat the attrition rate through training, and two, keep people. They like understand the value of it, and they have to be good people. Like the most important thing for me is I don't hire outside the salon. I try to train people because I don't want that nonsense. Except for the problem is sooner or later, you only have people who only see your salon. So the grass is always greener. Like I can't tell you how many, I mean, I've trained thousands of people. So I can't tell you how many people I get the text message or the email from 5 to 10 years later who are like, I took it all for granted. And almost everybody sends it to me, right? Because they never saw other salons. They think everybody's doing it like some brilliant way. Look, hairdressing is very, very simple. It's very, very simple. All you have to do is be there behind the chair and be focused on the guest, and the whole thing works, right? Like everything else is extra. So meaning that, like, what else is there? It's you, a pair of shears, and a head of hair.
Well, what do you think?
It's not that complicated. It ended up here. It ended up where it is for a reason.
Right.
Well, and it's not just like everyone before you was stupid. It ended up here for a reason. That's what a free market does. It ends up in the right spot because people are making decisions that are based on the best possible decision.
Well, so however, education and communication have been changed dramatically with technology. So like I think that it makes sense to think of, maybe, is there another way we can run the business and without that adapts to these changes that are outside of the control of the industry, that still ensure that we're passing on the information and places can stay open and stay alive?
It has to pass. Look, I taught for a long time, right? And the one thing that used to drive me crazy was I can't teach anybody anything with a couple haircuts. It's not possible. You have to teach them. It's so in depth, and there's so much knowledge. And that knowledge changes on every texture, right? Like I have one haircut, and then every single texture I touch, it's a different haircut, right? Like I never go about it the exact same way ever, right? And that's not what we're taught as an industry. But I think there's a problem with, one, our education is horrible. It's horrible. Just look at hairdressing in general. The worst it's ever been since I've been in the industry. I've been in it almost 30 years. It got so good for a minute, and now it's horrible. It's embarrassing as like someone who's spent my life like trying to make people better. It's embarrassing again, and it's because we as an industry have we've put a lot of stock in like the wrong education. I mean, it's just so bad. You have these individual hairdressers teaching before they even get to the 10,000 hour mark. I mean, that's insane. Now, I don't mind you sharing tidbits of knowledge, which I've done my entire career with people, right? But that's how I learned to be a good instructor. Is I had to also do that for 10,000 hours, right? Like, so just think about how few people are out there teaching. And if you're making any money in this industry, you probably don't want to bother yourself with teaching, right? So then how many few good teachers are out there? But damn, how many people are out there trying to get famous teaching on YouTube? Like, it's insane. And they're all trying to charge for it. And it's not good. I'm telling you, man, it's not good. It's better than what most people have, but it's not good. Right. So you have to just be honest about what it is. And I'm for it because it helps people get to the next level. But there's nobody great out there giving away information on YouTube. It's just it's so rare. I mean, and if they do, so few people can recognize it, because the honest truth of the matter is I could be in a salon with some of the best hairdressers that ever lived, and the only people that can recognize that are the people that are them. Right. Like, only I can recognize the difference between me and someone else at that level. The people under you, they're just guessing. They're like hoping they can tell because they don't have the skill level to tell. They don't know the difference, right? And that's a big part of the problem.
So why do you think, if someone builds a book and they want, what are the reasons that you've heard people say that they wanted to leave and go off and do something different or do their own thing?
100% of it is it's narcissism, right? Like, they want their friends to think they own a business. They want their clients, they want everybody to treat them like they're bad boss babes. Like, like the thing here is it's so much easier just to become it, to do it real, to become, like, work yourself through a career where you can make money, you get a clientele, you get a group, you get a voice, and then you magically will get there, right? Like, it'll happen, and it'll happen right. So when you get there, it'll stick. The problem I see in this industry is most people do it way before they should, and then it doesn't stick, right? So what's the point? So what? You did it for 3. Like, I'm going to tell you, I've had a lot of businesses be ultra successful, and I've had a lot of businesses fail instantly, right? Makes no difference to me as a human being. As a human being, I was just trying to do cool shit. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It doesn't tell you anything about me, right? I'm not like a better person because my businesses were successful, and I'm not a worse person because they failed, right? It just is what it is. It's not high nor low. It doesn't make any difference. And that we're putting too much emphasis on the wrong things. Like, first start by being a good person, then get skilled. Start there. Concentrate on nothing else, right? Like, those two things, those two pillars will make you like yourself. And you can't own a salon until you like yourself, right? How many people have you had come on your show and you're just like, they offered nothing for an hour? Right? Like, no real world experience. Like, no, like, I mean, I had a podcast where I just got tired. We talked about it earlier. I just got tired of doing it because I was like, there's not a lot to offer out there. Like, okay. The problem is so many people have not trained. They don't know what their processes are yet, right? If you're doing like 18 different things at one time, you're not doing anything at all. You're not helping anyone.
So if you're a salon owner, if you're a salon owner is watching or listening to this, and they're dealing with the challenge of figuring out how to adapt to this new wave of desires to be your own boss, or make more money, or whatever these reasons are.
Yeah.
I talked to
with this wave. Got to. Yeah. Sorry, that's where we were at. I forgot where we were at. Yeah. So I will say this. Look, kids are always going to want it. It's the problem with youth is that everyone before you didn't know what they were doing. No, they're not very smart, right? And you somehow have all the answers at 18, right? Like, just when I say it out loud, it kind of makes me laugh. But the thing here is, it's very simple for salon owners. You just run the best business possible and it will work, right? Like, just concentrate on you. Forget them. If they leave, they leave. Like, I hire good people. I hire people who want to be a part of the team, and I'm happy being smaller, right? Like, right now I have, I think, like 10 hairdressers. At one time I had 100 hairdressers, right? And no, sorry, I have 10 in the salon, but I have, probably 35 total with the barbershop. But like, I'm happy. 10's fine. Be happy with that, right? Like, if I could do it all again, run the best 10-chair salon you can. It's the most profitable there is. You run a 10-chair salon where you just need like 2 apprentices and 1 desk person, right? And maybe you have some like rock stars who have their own apprentices, right? But just keep it simple. Just do everything better than they could ever do it, right? Like, the one beautiful thing about being a village is I can offer them stuff that no one can offer, right? Like, I can give the guests an experience that no prison cell is ever going to do.
Okay, so on this topic, you mentioned in the past that, like, in I think it was the last show conversation we had, that you talked about retiring, and so if I'm a stylist and I look at, like, whether or not I can is not the point, but I see owning a salon as something to help me with that goal. And I don't want to be a behind the chair stylist my whole life, and I want to be able to retire. And so my thought is that I want to have ownership in a business. What are your thoughts about that? Like, how do you, what if a business requires a stylist to be present in it for it to be viable, like you mentioned in the past, and or if a lot of businesses require the stylist to be in it, then what is a business that doesn't require that you can actually retire on?
Well, you have to be, so there's a lot of competing thought here, but one, you have to be okay. Like we touched on earlier, you have to be okay making money for someone else, right? And then helping you make more money, right? It should be twofold, right? Any relationship, I have to give you something and you have to give me something for it to continue, right? Like, and it has to be like, I have to be offering away. And sometimes you may not notice that way, right? Like I teach you actually how to treat people or how to run your chair, or like the apprentices are not touching the tops of water glasses when they're putting stuff down, like simple little tiny things, but then making those good decisions all the way across the board. So the whole thing for me is very, very simple. It's like, you can't even talk about that until you get your hairdressing right. You can't talk about ownership until you get your management right. You can't talk about ownership until you get your training right. You can't talk about anything else until you get those things right, because otherwise you're in a race to the bottom. Right. And then once you get those things, let's presuppose you got all of those things right. Well, now you have to like learn how to treat people in a way that like, you know, you want to be treated, and you're just creating an environment where you're all in it together, and it's not this top down thing. And the problem is it will always feel top down a little bit, but you have to be okay with that a little bit, because like you're only thinking about you. It's 100% narcissistic for the average stylist, but the owner has to contemplate everything. They have to contemplate every single feeling of every single stylist, every single feeling of the apprentices, every single feeling of the shampoo people, of the desk people, of the managers, of the like. I mean, I got to take the accountant's feelings into into play, and then all of this hinges on treating the guest right and making sure that they're protected at the same time, which is at odds, right? You have two competing things here. So you have to at one time protect your staff from the guests, but you have to also protect the guests from your staff, and that's really difficult. So from a young hairstylist perspective, you're doing stuff that you don't like. They're making decisions that I hate and that are hurting me personally. But you don't realize that they're putting a bar on how much you can charge, right? They're raising that bar for how much you can charge. And the better everyone is in your salon and the better you treat the guests, well, that's how much money you make. So you're giving up crazy money long term to make money short term right now. And that's just, I mean, it's so mind bending. I can't even wrap my head around it. Right? Yeah. Okay. You get out and you make so money at like a booth rental, right? Like, or a chair rental, whatever you call it. But like, that's your cap, bro. That's your cap. Like the thing about salons is they removed the cap. So now you're talking about year 10, you don't want to still be charging $40 at year 10. You want to be charging $400 at year 10, right? Like that's what you have to be thinking about. And then the whole process is just very simple. You shouldn't do anything until it absolutely had to happen, right? Don't push anything. You gotta develop, and then it will happen. You get good at hairdressing, you'll develop into a teacher. You get good at teaching, you develop into a manager. Right. You get good at managing, you develop into so on and so forth. But the thing is here, you can't think about, first, no one retires from this industry. Very few people retire from this industry. So one, you have to like understand that, okay? And then two, the only way to retire from this industry is to run a good salon for as long as you possibly can. Unless you're gonna hop fields, and the only way to do that is to do all of these things, and there's no cutting corners.
So what about like the idea of I mean, I've interviewed some people and heard some ideas of business models that they kind of all over the place. Like one might like let you completely make your own schedule, but you have to like stick to it, because that's one of the things that, talking to stylists, that they want to be able to have control over their schedule. And then that seems to work for that stylist, that owner. But he also, he has a super sick brand and people want to work for him. So he has the ability to kind of pick the cream from the crop, so to speak. He can like really have his pick from like some of the better people. So it seems that that model of focusing on education and giving them some flexibility, it seems to really only work if you got a really sick brand. But if you got like a smaller shop and you don't have that same drive into your shop and you're a business owner, and I've heard people saying that they let them be like, they'll have them as a commission employee and to a certain point, and then they'll transition over to a rental. And then there's even been conversations about giving profit sharing, like a percentage of profits back to the staff. All these are to get people to stay a longer period of time in their lifespan.
I mean, all of this just like, I mean, literally my skin's crawling. First, like, if you don't know your business model and you don't have a focus, you shouldn't be an owner. It's really that simple. You can't be everything to everyone. That's literally a race to the bottom. Like, we're all losing. So you can't do that until you know the direction. That's like literally clue number one that this person should not be an owner, right? Like, if you're like doing a little bit of everything, it's like it's literally the worst thing imaginable. That those people should not be owners. They hurt more than they help. Two, like the thing with the look, if you're good in this industry, people are going to let you work 4 days a week. I never understand that. It's like every salon owner I've ever worked for, if you were awesome and you made money, they're going to let you work 4 days a week. Oh, right. Really? The problem is when you start going, hey, I only want to work 3 days a week. Well, now you're a part-timer. You don't belong in the upscale. Right. It's simple as that. Like, for me, I'm like, you don't know what you're asking for at that point, because once you go to 3, what's next? It doesn't stop at 3. Then it goes to 2, and then it goes to 1. And then the next thing you know, they're not in the industry anymore. And what's crazy about this, man, and I know from experience, they start to blame you. Well, why am I not making money anymore? And it's like, bro, you just systematically just dismantled your entire career. Like, I didn't do that. You did it. I just allowed it. Right. So you gotta be somewhat sympathetic or empathetic to the owners who are saying no, because they're trying to stop you from making bad decisions for your own life. Right? It's not always, I can tell you this from an owner perspective, it's not always based on the most money. It's based on you like people and you want them to do well. Like I put so much, especially if they're working in the salon, they don't need you. They absolutely do not need you. If they're working in the salon, they're making enough money. They don't need you. Right. So like, you got to give them a benefit of the doubt that they're like thinking about you. I'm not saying there aren't bad owners out there, but like I said earlier, I don't work in the anomalies. Right. Because I like every single point I bring up, you'll be able to go, well, there's this one person, this one time, right. And it's like every answer becomes, it just depends.
Well, what about,
right? But the problem is you can't run anything in this world with it depends.
Well, what about a co-op concept?
I don't like them. I mean, I don't like them. Either own it or don't. Like, get the hell, like, seriously, like, if you want to, like, look, the guys, David Thurston, who kind of like pioneered this, him and Alex from Butterfly Law, right? Like I think they're in Arizona. I could be wrong about that. But they kind of pioneered, they became Pope Riot. They owned Pope Riot. So, but they kind of pioneered this concept where they had a salon and then people kept leaving them. So they opened up a suite studio, but it was separate. It's not the same place, right? Like, here's the thing. Here's the biggest problem with that. And this is where it's like, you can't stay at the first level of thought. You have to look down the road. You have to go to level 2, level 3, or even start reverse engineering it backwards, right? You gotta look at this industry and go, okay, so if I'm in a salon and I'm paying you commission, which is part of the village, and that allows you to have a couple extra apprentices, probably more than you need because you've got to be geared up for war for the very busiest days. You probably have more receptionists than you need because you got to be geared up for war for the busiest days, right? But my money allows my comfort, right? I'm paying for that. That is what I'm paying for. I'm paying the owner to manage my money. He gets to keep 10% of my money, right? And put it in his pocket. That's I'm for it. He put all of his life on the line. His house is on the loan, right? Like, he has all the risk. 10%, dude, I'd pay you 20% to take this headache from me. 100%, easy, right? But what you can't do is I'm paying you to take care of a village of people who are also paying you a commission to take care of a village and build an environment for us, and then let someone come into that environment and take advantage of all the things I'm paying by renting a chair. I'm just saying, if you did that to me, I would be gone. Literally one day I'd see that, where someone got to come in and use my receptionist, my shampoo people, and they paid them $200.
What if you only did it from within? What if you said, this is the option here is, I mean, I'm not saying I like it, I'm just asking.
So I'll put this to you like this. Years ago, I locked myself in a closet, and because I was really worried about this part of the industry. And DC, you don't have to worry about it so much, but in Richmond, Virginia, you do. DC, the rents are too expensive. The amount they'd have to charge people for chairs is outrageous, right? So if I'm going to if I want to destroy my salon with a booth rental concept or a chair rental or suite rental concept, how would I do it? And I literally said, I kicked my managers out of the office. I kicked my PR people, my photographer. I had like a full-time photographer on the staff. Like I kicked everybody out of my office, and I sat in there for a week and just whiteboarded it out. And I was like, I built the most amazing concept, and it would literally destroy. And then I was like, I'm the only one that wins. And then I was like, I can never do this, because I could never do this to my industry. Right? Because if you look at it, like, why is it that everybody that owns these concepts are usually real estate guys? Right? Why is it? They're not salon owners. Why? Because they're fucking smart, and they have money, and they have MBAs, so they can go get loans from banks, because this is free money. It's unbelievable. They're paying $5 per square foot for their space, and then turn around and charging you $150 and giving you nothing for it. Like like, to me, it's insane.
Well, what about somewhere in between though? Like, why do you have to go full on all the way to this point where you're just a landlord and you have tenants? Like, can't you be something in the middle? Like, why are we have to be so binary? Huh?
What do you mean? Like a hybrid?
Yeah, like a hybrid or completely.
Because which concept works? Simply this, like, which concept works? If one doesn't work, then why do it? Right? Like, pick one or pick the other. But fucking around with both is like just a recipe for disaster, right? Like, I do not want to work beside people at a top level. I do not want to work. So much of what this is the owner controlling the direction and the voice of the salon. And I don't want to work beside mediocre hairdressers. And if you'll take any warm body and put them in the salon beside me, I don't want to work there. And it doesn't last. It doesn't take me a year to figure this out. It takes me one day, one bad hire, one singular bad hire, and I'm gone. How many times would you be proud of working in a chair rental salon? Like, proud about the people that comes in, the hair that goes out, the people you're working beside, the way that the desk people are treated, the way that the shop is like up maintained, right? Like, it's so few and far between. It's insane. It's not, if you don't have a village compiling, like, if you don't have 10 people putting their money together to have buying power, to have a manager, to have a desk person, to have shampoo people, then it doesn't exist, my friend. Like, there is no way to run a business good if you don't put the money in to have those people to, like, take care of the shop.
Well, what if they did? What if they agreed to?
It's not, because that exists already. It's called a hair salon. Right? Like, it's a commission-based model. It already exists. You're not this is the problem with our industry, is they think they can outthink it. It's very simple. It doesn't work. If it did work, it would already exist.
Okay, so
Capitalism is insane. It will go in the direction of what works.
Right. Well,
it's like unbelievable. This is why government can run nothing, because they're making decisions based on votes, not on actual money.
Well, wait a minute. What about publicly traded companies? Publicly traded companies have shareholders that have a vote and have a say.
But the shareholder doesn't get they get a say on like who's on the board. They don't get a say on how you make a hinge in the on the.
You also
on the
get dividends and ownership. So you're tackling the glory side. You're tackling the more
right, but
money
it forces
side.
the board and the shareholders force the boards and the CEOs and the COOs and the project manager all the way down to the floor to make good decisions. That's
Right.
it.
Yeah.
The shareholder has no real say.
They have a certain say depending
But they
on.
have no real say. Zero say.
Yeah.
Zero say. They can't. I can't tell I own a ton of Tesla. I can't tell Elon Musk how to build a Tesla. The funny thing is here, it's like I've done this pretty well in two different genres, right? Like barbering is not the same as a hair salon. It's a different business. I've owned other business. I own lots of other businesses, and they're all successful. But like, well, I mean, if they're going, they're successful, right? But you know, like I will tell you that like none of this stuff is rocket science. It's just doing things better than the next person, and it's simple. And like the more you complicate it, the worse everything is. The more you simplify it, the better it is. And hair salon, like that's just an easy equation that I think as an industry we've gotten so far attached from, because everybody's trying to tell you, everybody's trying to be a life coach and a business coach, and it's like, no, it's very, very simple. If you treat people well, you'll have more people. If you keep people longer, you'll make more money, because they'll be there longer to make more money, and they'll be there long enough to like actually contribute to the whole, to the more apprentices hitting the floor and more overflow to those apprentices, and then those apprentices will get busy and more overflow to the next apprentices, right? Like that is the key, and it's very, very simple. Like give me a concept of how you can treat someone any better, like any guest. Like give me a concept of like how you can treat a guest better than we currently do, right? Other than thinking about every single little thing they come in contact with in the salon, which most people don't think about because they first start with their staff. Well, you don't get that opportunity. You got to do both. You got to think about your hairstylists as well, and you got to create environments where both flourish, right? And that's very, very simple. What complex ideas can you add to that equation? There are no complex. If you run a good salon and people are making money, they'll be happy and they'll stay there. And if they know that like that money is going to a greater cause, like that should be sufficient. But the problem is we all start with this idea that there's got to be something better. Well, until you compel me that there's something better, let's first start with figuring out how to make what we're already doing good, right? Because there's a lot of smart people in the world, and we don't have something better. Right? There's 7 billion people on the planet, and Elon Musk exists, right? So there are actual aliens on our planet right now, right? Like Elon Musk, who's just literally his whole company is trying to figure out how to get himself home. Okay, so we know that this alien exists on our planet, and that there are very, very smart people, and no one can tell me a better concept. And until you can compel me that there's a better concept, we have to stop acting like everything we're doing is wrong, right? Because it's killing us all.
Good.
It's killing us all.
This is great conversation, and I loved talking with you. We've been running.
I'm very different than every hairdresser. Yeah.
I definitely would like to do this again. I know we ran way over, but just to wrap it up with a laugh, is there a time in your career that you might have been embarrassed or made a mistake and you look back on it and laughed about it?
The whole thing, my whole career is like one big joke, right? Like, I mean, the funny thing is you don't know what you know. You don't know what you don't know. So like, the one thing I'll say is like, relax a little bit, man. Like everybody needs to relax a little bit, because the hairdresser you are today is not the hairdresser you're going to be 5 years from now. The hairdresser you're 5 years from now will not be the hairdresser you are 10 years after that, right? And it's all embarrassing. Like everything you do, the way you talk to people, the way you treated people, the hair you did, like it is embarrassing, right? Like when I first got into this, I do what a lot of people do call craft hairdressing now. And I am totally embarrassed by the hair I did. I am totally embarrassed, because once you start getting money and charging people and doing good hair, it's hard to look back on that in a way that you're proud of it. And it's really hard to see in the moment, man. I'm telling you, because I had the same thing. I used to look at the hairdressers that were doing great hair beside me and be shitting on it. And because I was the craft hairdresser in the salon and they were doing French hair and I used to shit on it. And now I'm like totally embarrassed by it. I'm totally embarrassed by it because they were right and I was wrong. And the only reason I thought they were wrong was because they were older than me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's it, like literally, I'm telling you, man, this is the one thing, the one regret I have in life. It's the way I treated people when I was young. Because I got into this way too early. And it lasted way far too long.
Yeah.
Because as you know, men in our 20s, not the best people. We're not the best human beings.
No,
So I had 13 years of working in this industry before I started to become a decent human being.
Yeah, well, that's I love the fact that you can reflect on that, and I think that this is a great message to everybody watching or listening. And I feel like we could probably go on forever and keep chatting about all this stuff, but we'll have to save that for another conversation. And until next time, I just want to say thanks again for coming on the show. I think this was a very valuable conversation and something that is very dear to my heart. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, man, I'm telling you, this is a hard subject to talk about, but the problem that makes it so difficult to fix is that you can't have an honest conversation in this industry without people saying you're negative or like, but like the thing is here, I want the best for the industry and I know you do. And it's like, look, no two people are going to feel exactly the same on anything, but having a little empathy for the other perspective is everything.
100%.
You know, and that to me is everything about what makes our industry so special, is being able to like, you know, come across people from all walks of life and every thought process and kind of have empathy for them. And then hopefully we'll get something good out of it. Just talking through the message is how you get to the next step, you know, a better thing.
Absolutely.
But my guess is it's not going to change. It's going to go back. It's going to be a pendulum.
This is great, man.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. And if you're all listening on podcast, please give us a rating and follow us. If you're watching on YouTube or Instagram, please leave a comment, like, subscribe. It helps support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and we really appreciate you. And thanks again, Kelly.
All right. Thanks, homie. Take it easy.
All right. Peace.